Hi, it's Brandon from ThirstGym.com. Today we're going to talk about the dynamic effort upper method within the Conjugate system. If you're looking for any of the max effort lower, upper, or dynamic effort lower videos, those are going to be linked in the description box below for you to check out. And now let's talk about the dynamic effort method. Now, the dynamic effort method is going to be very similar to our approach with the dynamic effort lower method. We're going to focus on creating as much speed and power as possible within our upper body, in particular for the bench press in terms of powerlifting, since that's kind of what we're talking about, and we're really emphasizing more for the raw population here. Now, just a brief caveat, you can use the dynamic effort upper method with different plyometric throws, med ball work, landmine work. Any of that is all viable within this method, but for powerlifting, we're gonna stick strictly to the bench press. And we're gonna talk about how we're gonna lay this out and how I've designed this particular day within the system popularized by Louis Simmons. So, the first thing that we're gonna do, pretty common, is we're going to speed bench for the day. And just like with our dynamic effort method within the lower body, just with the upper body, same kind of idea here. Louis was really big on doing triples here, but you can also do these for twos, you can do them for fives. You have a couple different options here in terms of your reps, but most of the time you're gonna see these perform for triples, and usually you're gonna see them anywhere from 6 to 12 sets of 3, and it really just depends on your percentages and your waves and what have you. So generally with our speed bench, this is also gonna be performed usually against bands and or chains. But again, as we talked about with our lower body work, it doesn't have to be. And we're gonna kind of talk about some waves here as well and how you can wave your bench press and if waves are even worthwhile. So for our particular example here, we're gonna do this against bands. And what we're after here, typically if we're going back to the waves, just like I had in my other videos, we're assuming kind of week 1, working with this lifter. Generally, I like to do 40% for 10 triples. Okay, that's kind of my default place to go. And the thought process here is you get 10 good quality first repetitions, and then you still get to build some speed. You've got 30 total reps here, and usually you want your total reps to usually be in that 25 to 30 range, just like with our dynamic effort squat. The reason Louis chose the triples though is that because of the time and attention required for the bench press, he found was different than the squat. It does take longer to perform a squat, so you don't need as many reps to try to duplicate that time and attention that you're gonna have in that motion, where the bench press is usually less range of motion than a squat, which is kind of obvious. So that's kind of where those numbers came from. Now, when it comes to our waves, there's a couple different options here. One, you can essentially almost never wave this if you really wanted to. You could change the bar, the bands, the chains, anything like that, the range of motion. You could change this from week to week to week to week and be okay with the original way that Louis ran this out. I personally like to use waves, which is why I started at 40%, because with Louis' typical waves, you are generally doing 50% for 8x3. And so the way that I've designed this is my starting point, and this is my ending point. So therefore, I can get to this, all right? So if you want to do 3-week waves, this makes this pretty simple. If you do 3-week waves, then obviously you do 45%. You can do 8, you can do 3, or 8 or 10, doesn't matter. If you're going to do a 4-week wave, then you can just kind of match your dynamic effort work for your lower body work, 40, 43, 47, 50. 3 waves work well also for 5x5, and then you would just increase those over the course of the 3 weeks, and I've even done that for a 4-week wave. The other option, if you really want to get a lot of reps, the final one that you can do here, that I've done pretty frequently with athletes that just need a lot of bench press repetitions, okay? They just need practice on their technical work. I really like using 35% plus the accommodation of the bands of the chains for 12 to 15 sets of 3. Now, starting with a lower percentage, we can handle more total volume of work in terms of the repetitions, but that's gonna give us around the same total volume of load, give or take. So we can do more sets. So if you really are somebody that wants to work on your practice, your setup, your repetition of your bench press, the skill of bench pressing, this is another option as well, okay? And then you would just wave this basically the same. You could do 38, 42, and end at 45. And if this was, let's just say 15, we would go 15, 12, 10, 10. And this would basically give you a very similar approach to what we just did, but you're gonna get more repetitions, okay? So for our dynamic effort day, in this case, we're just gonna go pretty standard with what I do, which was again, 40% for 10 sets of 3, all right? Now, the secondary exercise. This is where I kind of mix things up. I usually like to keep it very similar to this, but I'll go with a close grip variation. And then since we did it against bands, I'm gonna keep that against bands. Now here are your two options of how you can organize this aspect of your training. If you're already at the size you want, we've kind of talked about some options if you need to put size on, or if you just need to work on strength. If you need to put size on, your first approach here is going to be volume. And it's usually gonna be 2 to 3 sets of 6 to 10 reps and at an RPE of like 7 to 9, depending upon where you're at in your training cycle. But this limits the amount of weight change that you've got to kind of do, and you can get some volume in your triceps using a close grip variation, 2 to 3 sets of 6 to 10 reps. Generally, I'm more in that 6 to 8 range, but I've also done sets of 10 as well for lifters that really just need to try to put some size on. If you're looking for strength, so let's say that you're weight class where you need to be, you want to be working on strength, then essentially you're going to do a top set of 3 to 8, and then same thing, RPE, man, my handwriting's terrible. RPE of 8 to 9. You're gonna push the RPE here a little bit more than you normally would, but you're only gonna work up to one top set, okay? And so when it comes to this, if I'm waving my bench press, I wave this as well. And what I like to do here is I usually like doing an 8. I'll put it down here for you. I like to do 2 weeks of 8s and then 2 weeks of 6s. And so this might be an RPE of 8 and then 8.5, and then my 6 I'm going to do 8.5 to 9. So you can see how technically the load would increase. So let's say they're going to do 160 plus the bands, and then they're going to do 165 plus the bands, and they're going to do 175 plus the bands, and then they're going to go to 185 plus the bands for the RPE 9 weight. You can see how that weight's going to increase over the course of the training cycle. So that kind of gives you some ideas here. And for ease of use, we are going to just say we're gonna work up to a 6 RM. Oh, since this is the first week, I'd probably actually do an 8 RM. We're just gonna say we're doing an 8 RM at RPE 8, okay? Exercise third, or C. This is also usually a pressing exercise, and it's going to be accessory in nature, and this is where I love my dumbbell work, okay, or machine work, okay. Now, the reason I like these here is that I've done my speed, I've done my strength and workup for the day. Now I can get some volume in. So if if we're only working on strength, usually I'm going to do 1 to 2 sets, so working up top of about 8 to 12 reps. And that's kind of where I call it for a day, whether that be incline pressing, dumbbell pressing, decline dumbbell pressing, dumbbell floor press work, machine press work, weighted push-ups, you name it, that's usually what's going here. Dumbbell overhead press would be another option. Arnold presses would be an option. Anything like that is usually going here, working up for 1 to 2 sets. Now, if this is a volume person, okay, we're trying to put on as much size as we can, this changes to my 3x20 method, okay? And so essentially your goal is to find a weight that you can get 3 sets of 20 with. So let's say it's 55-pound dumbbells for your flat work, okay? 3 sets of 20 there. Then what you're gonna do, once you can achieve 3 sets of 20, you're then gonna go to 60s and do the same thing for as many as possible and add up your total reps. Let's say you get 20 on the first set, 18 on the second set, and 17 on the third set. Then the next following week, essentially what you're gonna try to do is ramp this up to getting 20, 20, and maybe 18. Okay, and then hopefully by that third week, you're able to get 20, 20, and 20, and you've added volume to increase your strength, okay? So lots of different ways to go around here with the first part of the dynamic effort speed work that I do, but I do think it's important that you understand, depending upon what you need, there's different ways that I like to approach this. So size, if they're undersized, we need to build muscle, volume is where I go. Volume on the supplemental work, volume on the tertiary movement or the main accessory movement for the day, which is usually some kind of dumbbell pressing for higher reps. If it's strength related, we work up to a top set on our close grip to develop strength. We work up on a top set of our dumbbell pressing, same kind of thing, develop strength, since we don't need as much volume to put on the size. So hopefully that makes sense. Now let's talk about the rest of the accessory work. Okay, now that we've got our main pressing work done, speed work, working up, and our tertiary pressing exercise, which for this video, we decided to go with an incline dumbbell bench press. We're gonna say that shoulders are a little bit of a weak point for this particular athlete. Now we're gonna go on to the rest of our accessory work. So D1 is gonna be our first back exercise. And this also depends as well. I personally like to put more chin-ups and pull-ups here, okay? I understand that this is a lot of pretty heavy work. I'm gonna wanna try to get in my pull-up work first thing on so my back is as fresh as possible from an accessory work side of things. Now, if you do feel like you need to build up some density in your back, you're not thick enough, then I would start this with a row. But generally, I'm liking this to be my pull or my chin, okay? And just like with this, if we're doing top sets here, many times I'll do the same thing and we'll have a top set of 3 to 8 on our chin up. So that's either adding weight or using band assistance. Chances are if they're trying to develop their strength, we might hopefully hope that they're doing some pull-ups and chin-ups so they can do that. If not, then we got bigger fish to fry. But added weight to their chin-ups and pull-ups, and then that's how we can develop that. If they're undersized, just like we did with our dumbbell work, this would just been usually like 3 sets of max reps. And if they can't do body weight, then we might give them a target range of 8 to 12, okay? So you just gotta know where your athlete is a little bit. But generally, that's going to be my pull-up, chin-up area. So we're just gonna put pull-up here for this athlete, and we're gonna have them work up to an 8 RM on their pull-up, okay? My next exercise is gonna be a row variation, okay? And this is where I really try to go heavier on the rows. So I'm gonna pick a chest-supported row machine in this case, and we're gonna do 3 sets of 8. You can provide rep ranges, 6 to 8, 6 to 10, somewhere around there. But I usually like to go pretty heavy on this, and this is where volume's not gonna matter as much. Now, the big difference here is that we've already got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 exercises. Now, in my other videos, we basically stopped at our ease. My dynamic effort day is where I like to have extra accessory work, okay? We talked about the high-low system a little bit in other videos, high nervous system output, high stress days. And since this is technically our lowest stress day that we have, this isn't too bad. We're not working up crazy heavy here. 8 RM, probably in the low 80% range. Incline dumbbell press, 12 RM in the 70% range. And then we got accessory work, which is gonna be in that 70-ish, maybe 80% on like a pull-up. But again, our volume's coming up, but our intensity is pretty down. This is the lowest intensity day that we're gonna have. So since that's the case, that's where I'm gonna put my volume. And speed bench is pretty quick, not as much weight change here. Working up, working up, working up. You can kind of see how this can be a pretty quick day, especially if you're staying on your rest periods. So chest supported row machine, this can be any row variation that you really want. So as long as you understand that this is a row variant, then I don't really think it matters what you pick, as long as you're picking a row variation that you like and works well for you, or one that you really suck at, you're like, I'm not good at inverted rows, then maybe you put inverted rows here, okay? Next is gonna be F1, and usually what I do here is I pick another row variation. If I feel like it's lat focused, then I pick another lat variation. It might be a lat pull down, it could be like a pullover, it could be a straight arm lat pull down. But for our simple purposes here, we're just gonna pick a tripod dumbbell row just to make it easy. And again, I'm gonna up the reps more than what I did here. So we're gonna say 10 to 12 per side. So quite a bit of volume. And then my last thing here is usually where I'm gonna pick lower level accessory work So I'm gonna pick a G1 and a G2. And here's the nice thing. I want one of these to be a pull apart, a face pull, a rear delt raise. I want to make sure that one of these focuses on rear delt, focused. Doesn't matter what it is. So we're just gonna say it's gonna be, we're just gonna do, we'll do, I can't remember what I did on the other day off the top of my head, but we're just gonna say we're gonna do a cable face pull. And we're just gonna cram out 100 total reps. And then this last one here is gonna be dependent upon you. If you feel you need more tricep work, we talked about this kind of on the max effort day. If you feel that you need more tricep work, you put that here. If your elbows are bothering you, you need more bicep work, you put that here. If you need more back work, you put that here, whether it be rows or lat pull downs or chin up. If you need more direct shoulder work, lateral raises, front raises, that goes here. This is almost a catch-all exercise for me, okay? I really try to figure out what my athletes need for this last little bit in terms of accessory work that's gonna help them the most, what I think is gonna give them the best return on investment, and especially in terms of recovery. I put that here. So for this athlete, we're just gonna hypothetically say that they just need to continue to thicken up. So I'm gonna give them, we're gonna give them a chest-supported dumbbell shrug, just from a hypothetical here. And we're gonna give them 3 sets of 30, okay? So that's gonna be a lot of shrugs. Their upper back's gonna be toast, and then we're gonna pair that with a face pull. That's gonna thicken them upstairs, really build those traps up a little bit. And then obviously they're gonna superset this, and we're gonna say that they've gotta rest only 45 seconds between the superset. So that's gonna really give us some sarcoplasmic hypertrophy. It's really gonna get some volume and some density in that area. So you can see how our session has clearly laid out for this particular session. Let's break it down a little bit more. Okay, to wrap up our dynamic effort upper day, we're gonna go each thing and kind of talk about where you can make some changes as just a quick wrap up. So your speed work, you're always gonna bench press for bands or chains, or you can do it straight weight. Don't forget about here that you can also use floor press, you can use Spoto press, you can use Larson press, you can use a Swiss bar, you can use a cambered bench bar. There's lots of different ways you can mix this up. If you're in a general facility, you just need a barbell, bands and chains. That's kind of the old classic go-to, gonna work just fine, especially if you need the straight bar in your hand more to work on technique. I get it, this works great. I'm using this as a catch-all today. I understand there's a lot more variations here available to you. Next option for me is to generally do a close grip variation similar to what we did. So I usually, for logistic purposes, like to leave the bands on, like to leave the chains on, continue to do Spoto work. If I'm doing something for a reason, I usually try to make this a pretty easy transition for the lifter rather than make this a bunch of crazy things. Now, I will say that I'm not always gonna do the close grip. As we get closer to meets, I like to move this to competition grip work. I may decide to take the bands off. I may decide to do Spotos. I may decide to do long pauses. I may decide to do Larson work. This gets a little bit more specific as I get closer towards a meet. But generally speaking, if you're doing close grip work here, you're gonna build your triceps up, which is gonna help your bench press, especially on that max effort day. Exercise number 3 for me is always usually a third pressing exercise, usually with dumbbells or higher reps, depending upon what they need. Again, adjust your volume if you need to go up and build up more muscle mass. If you just need to address strength, then you just work up the top sets and really push those top sets. Really try to get every pound or every rep that you can that you're trying to aim for. After that, that's basically my pushing. It's done, okay? So this is all pushing. Now I'm gonna move to my upper back variations. So again, I really like pull-ups and chin-ups as my main movement for my first thing that I do here. But again, if you wanna do rows, pin lays, bent over rows, dumbbell rows, anything like that, I'm totally cool with that. But me personally, I just like to put my pull-ups and my chin-ups first. Next, and then I definitely always, if I do this, move to a row variation. I usually hit these for heavier work, 6, 8, 10 reps. Usually not pushing the volume very hard on my first one. On my next exercise, again, that kind of goes down to what I need. Usually I go to another row option, but you can definitely do a lat pull down if you wanted to, or a pull over or something like that. But I usually like a little bit more volume here. Here I've got 10 to 12 per side. I've even pushed these up sometimes at 15 to 20 per side if we're deep into an off season. I'm really trying to put some size on some people. Then my last two exercises, I always pick something preventative: pull apart, face pull, extra rear delt work, external rotation work, arm bars, all sorts of things here that's going to generally help my shoulder health. So we got cable face pull here for 100 total reps. And then this is my catch-all space for my training program where I give them what they need: extra tricep work, extra back work, extra shoulder work, in this case, extra upper back work via traps. Anything kind of goes here. Bicep work, if elbows are bothering you, you put here what you need, because it's almost like a free space, okay? You put what you need in here. I don't really think it's ultimately gonna affect what you do. It could a little bit if you need to build some more muscle, but it's just a good way to have two easy accessory-based exercises to round out your dynamic effort upper day. That's all I've got today for the dynamic effort upper method within the Conjugate system. Again, please make sure you check out the videos below in the description box below. If you're looking for the max effort upper or lower, or the dynamic effort lower videos, they're gonna be down there for you. Next week, we're gonna talk about extra training days, extra accessory days, or even GPP days, as Louis Simmons like to call them, how you can implement those into your Conjugate layout if you so choose to, and how I personally like to do that if I feel it's adequate for my lifters, as this is something that's very highly debatable. But I do think with how I have things laid out, there's obviously certain biases that I'm gonna have. I wanna make sure that if you wanna use that and prefer to use my method of layout of the way I do stuff within the Conjugate system, I want you to be informed there as well. So we'll make sure we talk about that next week. So thanks again for tuning in, and we'll see you next week at the next video.